ship has no offensive capabilities.
Got us. Give me all 6 fuel cells.
Aye, Captain.
Damn it.
They're closing fast, bearing 285.
All right, there. We can lose them there.
You are suggesting that we utilize the passage between the approaching structures. This ship will not fit.
We'll fit.
Captain, we will not fit.
We'll fit. We'll fit! I told you we fit.
I am not sure that qualifies.
And that is a clip, a hint, a flavour, indeed, of the new Star Trek movie. Delighted to say JJ Abrams joins us. JJ, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you explain, please, before we go any further, what the title of this film is? Because Mark has just been telling me there's a huge debate online as to precisely what... Because I thought it was just Star Trek, Into Darkness. But Mark, what's the dispute here?
Well, as JJ will know, there's been a huge fight on Wikipedia about whether you can Star Trek into anything, and I've never seen so many fans have such a heated argument about the exact grammatical correctness of a title.
Well, I'd like to start with an apology then. I certainly didn't mean to cause such a problem. But the idea was essentially Star Trek sort of as an entity, the idea that it was... in itself, going into darkness, the idea of sort of a trek into something doesn't necessarily mean to be taken literally, but the idea is that these characters who all came together in a film in 2009 are all now in this fairly new family, being thrust into an adventure up against an incredibly intimidating and frightening and sort of insidious bad guy, and the story is that they have to go through something that is a real gauntlet, and will they survive?
Okay, but simply no colon.
Yes, this was a colon-free zone, this film.
There's no punctuation at all, Mark. I think that's...
Although we were talking for about 20 minutes about a semicolon, and we decided not to do that.
Okay, so that is clear. It's from the director's mouth. So before we go any further into this, by the way, Mark has to go and pick his kids up in a few minutes. So if you hear any rustling, JJ, that's precisely...
I'm happy to go with him.
That's essentially... Hey, that would be extraordinary. So tell us, this is another origin story. Just tell us as much as you can then about the setup for Star Trek. Some people will have seen maybe the first 7 minutes. If they went to see The Hobbit, they'll have seen this extraordinary trailer surprise coming straight at them. They'll have seen that. What else do we need to know before we continue?
Well, we made this movie, the intention being that you never had to see an earlier Star Trek incarnation, whether our first film or the original series. The idea was to make a movie that would stand on its own and work on its own terms. One of the problems I seem to have again and again with certain sequels is this assumption that they make that you care, that you know the characters, and that you're deeply invested already. And I think that the idea was, if you happen to have seen our first film, great. If you happen to see the original series, that's fine too. But the movie was made really for moviegoers, not for Star Trek fans. And I can tell you the specifics of the story if you'd like as well.
Well, you've been very sort of clear about saying that you don't want plot spoilers, and I think it's actually quite a good idea for the audience to go in knowing as little as possible. But you yourself said that you didn't grow up being a Star Trek fan. In fact, you weren't one of the people who was attracted to the Trek universe initially at all, were you?
No, that's right. For some reason, I had friends who loved it, and they were very smart, and I tried to get on board and found it difficult to do. But I've come to love Star Trek as a result of getting to know it, working on the films.
And what was it that you found about it that you liked that hadn't worked for you before? Because I remember as a kid, the Kirk-Spock relationship, that was it. It's fine. You're in there. What did you find that drew you to it?
Well, I always found the original series a little bit static. A little talky, and somehow a little exclusive. I felt like I couldn't find my way in, and it was important for me when we started working on the first film, and certainly on this one, that we provide the audience with characters that had a little bit more vulnerability, a way to kind of connect with and get on board with the characters. Certainly, I saw some of the films when I was a kid, and there was wonderful writing, great performances, and a lot of those films actually did have quite a bit of humor, which to me is a key thing to connect with characters. But this idea for us was take the spirit of the original Star Trek, the archetypes, the characters, their relationships, and apply that to a film that also added a level of energy and adventure and action, so that it was a little bit more of a thrill ride. And balancing that with the kind of philosophical debates of sort of, morality and the kind of stuff that the original series did so well.
In terms of the visuals of the film, the film looks terrific. It's a real spectacular thrill ride. It is, of course, it's presented in 3D. You yourself have been quoted as saying, if I don't have to make another film in 3D, that'll be fine by me. I've always been very 3D skeptical. Where do you stand on it now?
To me, the movies I've loved all my life that have really gripped me were movies that, frankly, transcended 2D or 3D. They sort of sucked me into the world, and I was, I found myself, completely immersed in the drama or comedy or thrills of those films. So I think that I understand sort of the economics and why the studios like it. But for me, like anything, if it's not approached and handled in a way that feels inspired and justified, it ends up being a sort of a flimsy marketing ploy. The good news for us on this movie, if there's ever a movie that can be justified to be made in 3D, it's Star Trek Into Darkness. The visual opportunities, the action set pieces. It just felt like I get why this movie would want to be in 3D, and it really wasn't until I saw some tests done on our original film that convinced me how cool it would actually look. And I went, I thought, this is a pretty cool challenge. And I knew we were also going to be shooting the film, a quarter of the film on IMAX. All exterior scenes were filmed with the IMAX cameras, which is an enormous negative, which means that the visuals have a much higher resolution. So it was an opportunity to sort of test out some new techniques that I had not been experienced in before. And the stereographer, the person who actually helped create the 3D, is this brilliant guy, Corey Turner, who had learned over a number of years quite a few tricks and things he'd wanted to try and never had the chance to. So we did some things in this movie that, frankly, had never been done before in 3D. So I'm sort of a convert for the right kind of film.
And there was one of those moments. I mentioned the 7-minute trailer when people went to see The Hobbit. And when it came on, no one was quite sure what we were watching. But that opening sequence where there's a spear, I mean, it's kind of like an old-fashioned 3D gag, really, when the spear comes straight through the screen. Everybody ducked. Well, I was in an IMAX. There were about 400 kids in front of me. Yeah. We all ducked at the same time. It was a great moment.
Well, thanks. There are a number of moments in the movie that work in that way, and I think. For me, I thought, look, I'm going to do the best I can to make the best 2D movie I can make, knowing we were going to do a very cool, high-end, kind of cutting-edge 3D conversion that would be a kind of icing on the cake, a little added bonus for those who wanted to see it in that format. And I do think that plus the IMAX makes for a pretty incredible roller coaster ride.
What did you learn, JJ? What did you learn from doing the last Star Trek film?
Every project seems to be a graduate school experience where you come out and you think, oh my God, I learned all these things. I will apply those things moving forward. And then, you try to the best you can, and you realize that you've probably forgotten a dozen of equally important things that moving forward. So I feel like we're constantly learning or relearning the lessons that we need to learn. But as a filmmaker, Star Trek was only the second film I'd made. There was quite a lot that I thought, I didn't do service to, and moments that I wish I'd directed differently and better. And I got a chance to sort of try some of those things in this film. Certainly, the scope and scale of Into Darkness is far greater than the first movie, and so quite a bit of doing Star Trek Into Darkness was grappling with the enormity of it, the scope of it, the scale of it. But the key to this movie is you only care about that stuff if you love the characters, if you're laughing with the characters, feeling for them. And so I was never really worried about the action set pieces, of which there are many. I was really worried about the emotional connection, the intimacy, the comedy, feeling that those moments were playing. And if those moments didn't work, I knew that nothing else would.
And it's a wonderful liberation, really, I think, I thought this doesn't feel like the 12th movie. This does feel like we're starting again. It does feel as though we're investing again in these people, and it is funny, I think, consistently all the way through. The thing that I'm intrigued about, which you must have times 1,000, is that I have met 3 or 4 children in the last 3 months, and I've asked them what their names were, And they've told me, and I said, well, that's a strange name. That's an interesting name. Where did that come from? Expecting them to say Albania or something like that. And they've sighed theatrically and said, our parents are like Star Trek. And they've been named after Star Trek characters. And I find it difficult to understand that level of devotion and attachment. But you must get this all the time.
Well, I will say that that getting involved in the Star Trek universe has been something of an education in terms of fandom. There are, without question, though they might be a minority, Star Trek fans, the old school Star Trek fans, are an incredibly passionate group. And it's kind of amazing that a show that was on nearly 50 years ago for only 3 series, that show would endure as it has. And of course, films have been made and subsequent TV series were made. But there's something about it for those hardcore fans that is, it's very impressive to me, having come at this from the outside in, not being one of them.
And what have they made of the fact that you've changed your mind on Star Wars and you're going with that other alternative galaxy?
I feel like though a lot is made of the Star Wars versus Star Trek thing, the truth is that they are wildly different and disparate universes. And while certainly there are spaceships and space in both, it's like saying to someone who's doing 2 drama films in a row, well, both films are going to have cars and bipeds. You sure about that? They could not be more different in tone and character and history and story and theme. So I feel like they're both incredibly different, and I'm thrilled to be involved in either of them.
And just one final question on the genius of Benedict Cumberbatch. I've been a fan of his since seeing him he played Stephen Hawking in a TV movie here a few years ago. Quite exceptional. I mean, and a genius actor, and he is such a bad guy for you. So that's not much of a question. It's more of a statement. But why did you pick him? When did you first come across his work? Because he's great.
Well, I will say, first of all, I couldn't agree with you more. I think he's truly one of the greatest actors I've ever seen. I mean, let alone had the good fortune to work with. He is an incredibly smart guy and wildly funny, and as has a work ethic like maybe no one else I've met. We were looking for the right actor for the part, which is always what you're looking for. And Damon Lindelof suggested I look at Sherlock, which I'd not seen, and watched Sherlock. My jaw hit the floor. The guy was so incredible. And I called him up, and he auditioned and sent in a video audition. And it was, it was clear upon first viewing that he was our guy if we were lucky enough to get him. And so working with him impossibly exceeded all expectations, and he elevates every moment he's in. And this is a very intense, very scary character. Physically, mentally, he's a really insidiously manipulative guy, but also a brute. And then on top of all of that, you've got to actually start to sympathize with him a little bit at a point. And this is something that I don't know of other actors who could really pull off all those things with such aplomb.
JJ, we appreciate your time with us this afternoon. Thank you very much.
You're very kind. Thanks for having me.